So we are back here again for another session. So I'm Audrey.
And I'm Carl.
And today's big question is, for Carl, obviously, how do you scale your startup business, right? Right now, I know you guys started in Singapore, SGAG, and then you guys come to Malaysia, MGAG, and now you guys are in Philippines, right? PGAG, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so share with us your scaling stories.
So I think when we think about scale, when I used to read about scale as an early entrepreneur, it was simply you just bring more people in, you just kind of like do more things, and you're a lot busier and you fly around a lot more. Like that was the simplistic view of it. Mm-hmm. But actually doing it, our journey went from just the two of us as founders.
Yep.
And then we had a nice cozy team of like 10 people after the first year. And then 10 became 50, 50 became close to 100 now, right? And I think behind that was a lot of difficulty and challenges that we never could see, because for an entrepreneur like myself, I never knew what it would take for me to get to that scale, right?
Yep.
And I didn't have the skill sets to get to that scale.
Yep.
And I only realized that when we were about 20, 30 people, and people would come up to me and ask me questions like, hey, what is my career progression like? Like, hey, how can we think about certain things that I had no knowledge of? And I realized the simplistic answer of what got us here won't get us there.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And I realized that I needed to either hire some really experienced people in specific fields to help us. But one of the key things that we had to do for the core team, the early team, was to actually go out and learn so much about different things that you were going to focus on, right? So for example, in the early days, I would be the one pitching to customers, I would be managing customer relationships, I would be ensuring that the campaigns would go well on our platforms,
Yep.
right? So I was going out and I was selling a lot, right? Today we have sales managers, account managers that take care of those relationships, and we would have people that would actually make sure that the whole process would go smoothly, report in with clients, maintain that relationship. And I don't need to do that, right? So, but for me to figure out what do I do next, that's also an important question. And how do I do these new things that I've never done before? So one of the big things for us was always people. Because we're a creative business, we need a lot of creators. So how do you think about people ops? How do you think about managing people, having difficult conversations, career structure, progression, company structure? Like when we were 10 people, it was so flat.
Yep.
So easy, no hierarchy, no reporting lines,
Yeah.
Everyone's like friends, like a family. But as we grew, we had to suddenly think and design structures. What would it take for you to get promoted from a junior executive to a manager, right? What are some tangible KPIs you had to hit, and how do you design a flow structure that would measure and track and promote fairly and promote sort of in a way that was also beneficial to the business? So these were a lot of things that we had to figure out. And we actually hired a professional coach to help us do that, because we were growing so fast and things were in an absolute mess that we were recommended to see this person who had helped startups grow, who had sort of also the experience of corporate and designing teams, and basically coaching us to become sort of leaders of this much larger pack.
Nice. So I think maybe the question is, at what point do you think having a, like what you say, a professional coach to come in to make to help you get through this hurdle?
Right. So for us, I think in our business is human capital, right?
Yeah.
Human capital is one of the biggest things we invest in, and the magic number that we talk about playbook when we start a company, 0 to 10 people is going to be very fun, very easy, super close, tight knit, and you would probably do it well if you solve problems fast enough. 10 to 30 was actually make it or break it, right? So 10 to 30 was the point where a lot of things started to breaking. When 10 people, it worked, but for 20, 30, it's not going to work. And those things were breaking apart fast. So in every country, in every team that we roll out, that's the kind of rhetoric that we tell them. 0 to 10, enjoy yourselves, pace yourselves, have fun. But 10 to 30, that's when you really need to start thinking and asking big, difficult questions, and it's going to be super hard. But if you can get through the 30 mark, that's when things will start to look up. the next point that we have not hit yet would
Yeah.
probably be the 200 mark. When you
200
hit
mark.
200 people, that's going to be completely different again.
Yeah.
And that's when you need to level up and sort of adopt new practices and new teams, new structures all over again. But I think the comfort zone for us is really anything above 30 and probably going to 200. If the foundation is stable and built correctly, it can withstand that kind of a number.
Yeah, I think we all kind of seen a lot of business. Some businesses come, some businesses go. People always think that the hardest bit is starting one. Actually, starting one is hard enough, but maintaining one, that's
Yeah.
even harder, right?
Great point. And one of the things I literally did was because, as an entrepreneur, you read
Yeah.
so much about, like unicorns and these big
Exactly.
businesses, case studies. And those were all big, successful companies. But nobody really talks about the hardest part, growing it from a small company to a mid-sized one.
Yes.
Like the kind of scaling techniques, strategies, is very undocumented.
Yes, exactly.
And that is really, really a missing gap in the market.
I agree. So very often I see people say that in not just in terms of people headcount, it's also in terms of years, right? Like 0 to maybe 2 or 3 years into business, that's one journey, and then the third year to the fifth year, that's another journey, and people often fall short at the fifth year. Right. Maybe because they just don't know how to scale it to a mid-sized company, or maybe because they burn out, right, in between.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those things?
I think burnout is super real.
Yeah.
And I've actually never thought of it as years. I think that's an interesting perspective. But I think founder burnout is very real.
Yeah.
Like 5 years in, you realize that, hey, maybe your life stage has changed. Maybe you have a family, maybe you have financial needs that you need to adhere to. And I've known a lot of founder friends who also sort of, hey, let's not do this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not that sort of college student where I can sort of bootstrap my way and not worry about money because now I have bills to pay. I'm thinking about marriage. I'm thinking about buying a house. I'm thinking about a car. And perhaps drawing a startup salary is not going to cut it anymore, right? And a lot of them give up on their companies. So I think pacing yourself, understanding your risk profile, not just now and within the next 2 years, but in 5 years' time, if you were successful, what would you need to get through your life stage, right? And I think that is something that people don't think too much about. And pacing yourself. Right, not to go all in for 5 years, and let's say that exit that you were dreaming of, hoping for, doesn't happen. What are you gonna do next? Right?
Exactly.
Are you not gonna continue anymore, or what are you gonna do? Right? And I think that's really, really big questions that you need to ask.
Yeah. So I mean, I've seen people who I've spoken to a friend, and and he has been doing whatever he's doing for the past, I think, 3 years, and he was coming up to me and say that, you know what, this is going to be the make or break year. If nothing happens, I'm just going to give up, right? And it's very hard for me to say, hey, carry on, because the future is uncertain. It's very hard for me to say, oh, you know what, just carry on and things will be fine. But at the same time, I can't just say that, yeah, you know what, you should probably give up. But what if he's just 3 feet away from goal?
Exactly.
So I think this is when when people walk onto the entrepreneurial journey, it is a very personal choice. By the end of the day, you can ask for a lot of people's opinions, and everyone will have all sorts of opinions, right? But you have to make that decision in the end to say that if I'm going to give up, right, I can't blame anyone else. Or if I'm going to stay on and things, don't seem to be so great after all, I also can't, blame it on any other people as well.
Exactly. I think the Instagram founders were actually just building Instagram on their own and had no idea of what would come, right? And when Facebook bought them out for however many billions,
exactly.
It was really something that came out of nowhere, and I don't think they could have planned for it. So I think ultimately is whether you're passionate enough to see through the idea, even though it might be years down the road, and you might have to sort of bootstrap your way through, right? And what's going to take you through some of the lowest pits, some of the most challenging times. I think those are things that really test your appetite and your passion towards the business or the idea that you are pursuing.
Yeah, so I think there's 2 parts of it, right? Scaling. How do you scale from something small to a mid-sized company, and eventually from a mid-sized to a big company? That's one part of it. Of course, this is the happy journey that everyone would want to get on. But sometimes there is also another part of the journey which obviously a lot of media won't share with you. Like sometimes things just don't work out the way you want it to be. And And I think a lot of all these two things are not addressed in the media, are not addressed anywhere at all to tell people how to handle this situation. How to handle a situation where things are going really well.
Yeah.
Right? So that, you make sure things don't break. And how to handle situations when things are not doing well.
Yeah.
What can you fall back to? What are the choices that you need to make? What are the choices that you need to keep in mind?
Yeah.
I think these are the two things that you don't see in the market a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the media just celebrates,
Successes.
success stories of fundraising, of acquisitions, but I think the hardship and some of the struggles behind it, sometimes it's really more important of how to overcome and the mental tenacity and perseverance in reaching some of your targets, be it in just traction or even fundraising. I think there's a lot to learn from that, and I think that's really important as well, part of the conversation.
So if you have the word of advice for three different groups of people, the first one would be people who want to start an entrepreneur journey. The second one would be someone who started the entrepreneur journey and they're growing the company already, and things seems pretty exciting. And of course, another category of people would be someone who started the journey and things are not doing too well. Okay, so maybe you could give a word of advice for these three groups of people. Let's start with the ones who want to start a company.
Right. So I think starting a company is great, but I think the one thing that I always advise people to think about is it really worth it, right? Because it really depends on life stage, risk of appetite, passion for idea, and are you really going to enjoy that process? I think it's very sexy to run a company, but there's a lot of downside that you don't see, right? And sometimes it is okay to be an employee in a startup or in a large corporate, and you would probably statistically proven to make more money going to a stable job rather than starting a company, because 90% of the time your company would fail, right? So I think there was a book that says very clearly the 100th employee of Dropbox, when Dropbox IPO'd, made a few $100 million from his stock options.
Nice.
Right? His job was not to start his own business, but actually to choose the right business to join. As the 100th employee of Dropbox, he made the right decision, and now he's a multi-millionaire, right? And he's probably made more money than many of us founders that would not even come close. But he was purely an employee, and I think that's a great analogy to say that there is absolutely nothing wrong in not starting a business, and there are so many opportunities out there that don't involve the risk and the downside of starting a business, but also presents its learning opportunities, growth opportunities, if you choose the right company, right? So I think throw away those sexy dreams of owning a startup, but actually pick the right job that will stretch you, challenge you, and give you the maximum fulfillment in your time spent as an employee.
Yeah, and I mean, not just that, these days, companies are looking for people with entrepreneurial mindset. So you don't exactly need to, go out there, start a company, but within companies itself, they are scouting for this sort of people to head new projects, right? To head new ventures as well.
All the time.
So, all the time. All right, the second group of people, some who are already entrepreneurs who started it and things are going pretty well and they are in the midst of scaling.
Right. So I think in the midst of success, finding success early on, I think there's a tendency to look up and say, hey, things are great, what could go wrong? Everything is rosy. But in all aspects of life, be it business or personal, you know that you are only 3 feet away from a storm, right? And what are your safety nets, right? How are you sort of strapping yourself up for that journey when things will start to crash or when things will start to sort of get shaky? How are you going to hold on? What are your support networks? What are some of your backups that you can fall back onto to make sure that you are able to tide through the storm? Do you have enough runway? Do you have enough cash flow? Do you have enough sort of solid leadership in your second layer to help in the event that you are unavailable to lead the ship for a time period? Would people beneath you be able to step up, right? So there are many things that you can do to prepare yourself in times of calm seas, so that when the storm comes, you guys are so prepared for it. And I think that's something that I always talk about to the team. Like, things are going well, enjoy it, breathe, go home a bit earlier, spend time with your family, do important things. But when the storm comes, you are ready for that, right? So I think that's really, really important for people in this part of their journeys.
Great. Okay, the last category of people, entrepreneurs who are not doing the best that they are hoping for, who are not doing really well.
Right. So I think that's probably going to be the toughest
The
situation
toughest,
to be in, because I think there was all this optimism.
Yeah.
I think for me, I've had failed startups before, right? And I think it's never easy to say, I'm done, it's time to move on.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the most important questions to ask. Is your time better spent somewhere else where you have more opportunities for upside rather than clinging on to a sinking ship? Right? And I think emotionally as founders, you are very attached to that idea because this is your baby. But sometimes the best answer, the best decision to take might be to say it's the right time and the best time to let go, because there is another opportunity coming by. And if I don't hop on this boat now, I might miss it forever.
Yeah.
So I think that's a tough question to ask. And so I think for this group, it's never to be overly emotionally attached, irrationally attached to your startup or your idea that is not working out, even though you have tried for quite some time and you have given it your all. And I think the best answer to this group of people is always to let go fast and move on to something else, because you never know where that might take you.
Nice. All right, I think that's pretty much it. Love everything that you have shared with us. I think these are insights that not everyone will be able to give you, because you have been there, you have started companies. Some, as you say, some companies didn't work out, but you have started one that worked out pretty well, and now you're in the midst of scaling it as well. You had also companies that didn't really work out, and when you have been through the process and you've been through the journey to be able to empathize with people. Very often, we don't see enough of all these entrepreneurs who come up and share with us their stories. Thank you very much, Kyle.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, guys, that's all. If you want to have more of all these sessions and listen to more insights from people like Kyle, do join us at Next Digital Marketing Lab. Looking forward to see you guys there. Bye.